Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am very pleased to welcome back to our airwaves Congressman Bill Foster, represents Illinois' 11th District. Bill, how are you doing?
Oh, how's anybody these days?
I hear you, boy, I hear you. It is, some days it's a real struggle. So I know you're home on a recess, is that correct?
That is correct.
And anything special planned?
Well, we're having a town hall tomorrow.
And where is that?
7 p.m. Over.
Yeah, give it a plug.
Benedictine. Yeah, sure. So it's at Benedictine University's Goodwin Hall Auditorium, and so the event starts at 7, but doors will open at 6:30. And we've just gotten a tremendous amount of interest in this, and I think we're already over capacity, so we're going to have to probably turn people away. Yeah,
wow.
It's not a small venue. Well, Republicans have also been getting a lot of interest in their town halls, but the interest has not been positive. And so actually Speaker Johnson has told them to stop having town halls so they don't get yelled at.
I know. And, I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but all this talk that the people showing up at the Republican town halls, they're paid disruptors. And I looked out at the audience, over several of the clips I've seen. I don't know. They sure, they're a lot of them. Maybe it's like they went to the local senior center because those people, they don't look like paid demonstrators.
No. But if you can't make it, or if you end up being turned away because we're over capacity, we're also live streaming it on our Facebook page at Congressman Bill Foster on Facebook.
Great. Bill, when you do something like this, how does it work? I mean, do you ask people to submit questions? Do you have things that you want to get off your chest before it gets started? Is there like an agenda or items?
Well, we're kind of playing it by ear. Our current plan is that I'm going to have some opening comments, just sort of because there are a bunch of questions that are obvious. We're also going to be accepting from people that have RSVP'd for the event. We're going to ask them for, if they have specific questions they want to ask. And so the problem you get into is a lot of the questions are the same. And so we sort them through, and we'll do that sort of initially. I believe we're going to be circulating cards for the audience, and then my staff will collect them and try to sort them so at least we hit the main categories of questions. And then we'll open it up to a mic at the end of it.
At both Democrat and Republican town halls, a big part of the question, and very generic, is like, what are you doing? How are you resisting all the horrible things that are happening? So give us that answer now.
Well, we have to be strategic about this. There are a handful of predictable major fights that we have to have. The first one, the CR, is one that continuing resolution, the thing that I voted against in the House, and then in what was a very difficult vote for a lot of senators ended up passing, but so that's only the first and probably the least important of them. The big one is the budget fight and also the debt ceiling vote. And those are coming up within the next couple or few months here. And those are the ones that are really going to change the course of our economy if we let the Republicans prevail on that. And those two big fights are ones where the public will be strongly on our side. No one, even the Republicans, don't want to see Medicaid cut. And it's like 65% of Republicans think we should protect Medicaid. And that's a big change over the last few years. If you go back a few years, or certainly a decade, Republicans just thought of Medicaid, for example, as, that's just, that you're giving away free stuff to, people in the city. And now they understand that no matter where you live in America, this is what keeps grandma alive when she runs out of money. Long-term
and
care.
A lot of families are going to be getting that call. Sorry, grandma can't stay here at the nursing home anymore because there's no Medicaid to underwrite her care. That's going to be a big shock to a lot of families.
Rural hospitals are going to be dropping like flies if the Medicaid cuts happen. So that's one example of thing where that's a fight we should be having because the public will be strongly on our side. The Ukraine is another example. Where we just had a meeting today with the largely Republican-leaning mayors in DuPage County. Okay, and they were telling us privately that they were just horrified by, Ukraine and some of the illegality that they're seeing out of the White House. And, they're not willing yet to stand up and say and speak against them. But, I think that's an important thing because, many people come up to me and they say, what can I do? What can I do now to help? And, one of my answers to that is that there are elections coming up locally, in municipal elections, and all across the country at different times in the next few weeks, there are municipal elections. And under normal circumstances, I think it's a good thing that municipal elections are often nonpartisan elections, okay? But in this point in our history, every elected official has to speak out of whether or not they support the illegal actions of the Trump administration. And any elected official who's not willing to take an position on that, it should, frankly, answer at the ballot box. And so if people want something they can do right now is they can go and have a look at their elected officials that are representing them or running to represent them and say, okay, what is their position? Have they spoken out against Trump's illegal actions? And if the answer is no, maybe they should be working to get someone that actually represents them on what is now an important issue.
Bill, you said something that I'm hearing over and over again, that privately Republicans are as horrified as the rest of us by what's going on, but they're just not publicly ready to speak out yet. What's your sense of the threshold? What's the bridge that will be a bridge too far?
There's a spread of them. We've learned very painfully that there's a variety of kinds of Republicans these days. Many of them you identify by when they just say, okay, I've had it with this party and I'm just leaving office. People like Mitt Romney, who I have lots of problems with, but in the end, he just couldn't take it, or Jeff Flake even earlier. That there are a lot of those. Adam Kinzinger just finally had it. And so that's part of it, but that's too late. I think one of the thresholds will be when they see it is no longer in their best interest to stay silent. And part of that will be when they see Trump's poll numbers continuing to crater, when they see the economy continuing to crater. Just the Wall Street Journal was saying, well, right now all of the big company CEOs are not criticizing Trump, but talk to them again when the stock market, instead of being down 10%, is down 20%. And so, that's another thing. When the economy, when they go to town halls or go to senior centers and have the seniors tell them that their life savings on which they depend are being crushed because the stock market is crashing because of things that Trump has chosen to do and that are really causing damage. So all of these things will build up until at some point the fraction of Republicans for which morality isn't a question but simply self-survival in politics, at that point they'll say, okay, it is my interest to speak out against Trump. And so they'll come one at a time. There isn't one tipping point.
Wow. Bill, we need to take a break. I'm talking to Congressman Bill Foster, represents Illinois' 11th District. We're going to be right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am joined by Democratic Congressman Bill Foster, represents Illinois' 11th District. Bill, there's so much that is happening. I mean, you gave us a heads up that, we need to pay attention to what's going to the debate and the vote that's going to be coming up on the debt ceiling. What else is going on, a bill or a movement of any kind that we should be paying attention to especially? I'm so afraid I'm going to miss things these days.
Yeah, well, it's just a blizzard of activity, and this is actually a strategy by the Trump administration, by Trump personally. They know they're failing at a bunch of things. He said he was going to bring back inflation, bring prices back to where they were when he was in office. On day one, he was going to take action. Guess what? He's failing on that. And there's a technique that Boris Johnson would talk about, which is that when you're failing at something and you're failing at something publicly, sometimes your best strategy is to throw a dead cat on the table. And so that everyone will talk about the dead cat instead of your failure. And a lot of times when you see Trump doing something new and crazy, it's because he has failed at something and doesn't want people talking about it. He was going to end the war in Ukraine on day one. He said he would take him 24 hours to do it. Guess what? He's off by a factor of about 60 right now on this.
Yeah, and he can barely get Vladimir Putin to take his call. I mean, he's been talking publicly about, I really need to talk to Putin about this. And apparently there's now a reluctant phone call that's going to take place.
Yeah, no, it's a problem. And, you sometimes just need a coping mechanism to deal with this blizzard of noise. And I'm surprised you haven't asked me about the big issue of the day, which is whether or not I support returning the Statue of Liberty to France. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that. Insane. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I haven't talked about it on the air, though, so give the listeners some context here.
Oh, well, a member of the European Parliament from France gave a very eloquent speech. He's a really charming young guy. And about why, given the fact that the United States has abandoned the democratic principles that France admired so much, and he went down the whole list of things, and the anti-scientific bent that, firing the scientists and things like that, and he went through that, maybe we should consider asking the United States to return the Statue of Liberty. And then the White House today said, no, we're not going to do that, okay? I think personally that we should just send the Statue of Liberty back to France for safekeeping until we've repaired our democracy.
Until we've earned it back.
Yeah, anyway, so that was... But you have to keep your sense of humor here. It's one of the many coping mechanisms we all need, but you have to stay focused on the important fights for the people we represent. And to balance those two every day to keep it being effective. Yeah,
I agree. And, besides, how would we get it back to them? We'd have to we'd have to lay her on her side. We'd have to float her back. And, I can see where that wasn't something.
It came over in pieces, as I remember. It was not a serious suggestion, but it tells you how far we have slipped from our ideas.
I play clips of all these people, the prime minister in the UK, the head of the Munich Security Conference, other leaders who are like, we've got to acknowledge that we are on our own, those of us in Europe. We've got to acknowledge that America isn't what it used to be. It may never again be. But, we've got to sort of figure this out on our own. And there was even some speculation that the European Union might want to put together their own military force, since, aside from separate countries, but that the European Union might create its own military, since the feeling was that we couldn't necessarily be counted on to fulfill our NATO duties. I mean, it's horrifying. It's embarrassing.
That's pretty correct. That is, both of those are correct adjectives. So, we just have to stay calm and focused and choose the fights that the public will be on our side, and put a scare into enough Republicans that we can get only a few of them. We only need 3 of them in the House to change the way they've been voting, to basically nullify everything legislative that's happening. All right?
But Bill, how do you scare them more than Elon Musk scares them? I mean, forget about Donald Trump throwing a fit. Elon Musk has made it quite clear that anybody that doesn't see the world his way, he's got enough money to primary somebody. I mean, he's trying to weigh in on the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin.
That's right, and that's just so that they can keep the gerrymander in place. That is, really cost Democrats probably 2 or maybe 3 seats in Wisconsin that ought to be ours. It's interesting to make the observation that the Republican majority in the House is entirely due to the fact that they gerrymandered North Carolina. All right, and that was a 4-vote swing. Anyway, so this is we have to fight the money fronts here, and the thing that keeps me focused is you just think about the people that are going to be hurt if we let them succeed, and that's.
Bill, I want to know if you think this is fair or not. There are people who've complained, why, these are really unusual times. This is not business as usual in any way, shape, or form. So why aren't we hearing from Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and some of the other people who we might expect? Kamala Harris. I mean, Tim Walz did announce that he was going to go on a tour and going to hold town halls in areas where Republicans wouldn't. So he's sort of stepped up. Where are the other big names in the Democratic Party?
Well, the reason why I think these were actually correct decisions by everyone, including Tim Walz, is that, 2 years from now, in the next election, we have to get back the 3 seats that we lost. We used to have 3 seats in Iowa. Now we have 0. All right. We have a good shot at 2 seats in southern Wisconsin. All right. And we don't hold those. That alone would be enough to flip the House. And so that, I'm not sure if Hillary Clinton went out into those seats, that would actually, I think, would just stir up the Republicans. And so, it's frustrating, but not everyone that we have is our best messenger here.
Well, I'm not even necessarily talking about going out and campaigning for specific candidates or seats, but just being more public about, hey, kids, this is not normal. I mean, I get a newsletter from former conservative radio host, now political pundit Charlie Sykes. And, I mean, he's always saying, no, we are not the crazy ones. You are not crazy. This is really happening. And he's speaking out over and over again. I mean, I'm not talking about necessarily on the campaign trail, but going on, even if it's MSNBC and not CNN, but saying, hey, guys, don't think you're crazy. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And it's time to figure out how we're going to stop it. I don't know. I just wish one of them would be a little bit more public.
Yeah, well, everyone has to navigate what we're trying to accomplish, and there are different lanes to swim in. There are a handful of Republicans that I work with regularly, have pretty good relationships with, and I know have a lot of decency at their core and are simply they're being intimidated. Because if they speak out now against Trump, they're going to be faced with a well-funded primary opponent. And Trump has a long list of scalps on his wall of Republicans that he's taken out.
Yeah.
One of the things that when I say what's wrong with our system that this happens, if you think about it, Trump gets all of his power from Republican primaries, all right? And he does not try to play in states like California or like Alaska that have top 2 primaries. They have they don't have separate partisan primaries. So there's no Republican primary that Donald Trump can threaten people with in California or most of the West Coast states or in Alaska. And interestingly, if you look at what just happened, Louisiana also had a primary system like this, and they changed it specifically so they could go after a moderate Republican senator who's now in deep trouble because he's going to have to survive a Republican primary election. And so, there's this group, Change Illinois, that I think does a lot of good work. And one of the things that they're working on is trying to get nonpartisan primaries, either open primaries or ranked choice.
Yeah,
in
ranked
Illinois,
choice, I think, would be such an important factor.
Yeah. Well, if you look at how it worked in Alaska, it succeeded at its design goal of keeping Sarah Palin out of Congress. Because what happened is, no, seriously, that was very explicitly why they put that in. And so what they've had since then, because what happened in the election, Sarah Palin got the plurality of votes, and in a normal system, she'd be in Congress. But it turns out she was nobody's second choice. All right, and so the way you win a ranked choice election is to be everyone's second choice. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is we got a moderate Democrat, and then in the next election we got a moderate Republican. And this is a much better way for people to compete in a healthy democracy.
I think so, too.
So I'm a big fan of that.
Congressman Bill Foster, it is always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, and thank you for keeping the flame alive.
We do our best. Well, mostly we do our best. I don't know if I did my best today, but thank you anyway for the kind words.